Welcome to VMware Recovery for the Unitrends System Administration course. By the end of this module, you'll be able to identify your recovery approach and options. We're also going to take a look at recovery of your VMware hypervisor, and we're going to look in particular at file and folder and application recovery, instant recovery, and just VMware VM recovery, putting a guest back just normally. First, let's take a look at determining your recovery approach. Where are the backups you want to recover? Kind of the first question we have to ask ourselves when we want to recover anything. Once again, there's different types of backups based on the types of recovery you need to do, depending on how far back you need to go or the type of recovery. First off, most of the recovery you're going to do from the local backup appliance, those backup catalogs are kept ready for recovery on the local system. That's basically your short-term retention, right? That's the ability to do the recovery right off the appliance catalogs, right off the local system, local appliance. Now, you also have cold backup copies. Those are the copies that we've sent off to cold storage, to tape or disk or NAS, to the cloud. That's two-phase recovery. You have to import the copy from the external storage first back to the appliance and then recover it as you would a normal local backup once it's imported. Now, you also have the hot backup copy, and that's a backup copy catalog that's kept ready for recovery on the offsite system. On the offsite Unitrends appliance, it's ready for recovery back to the hypervisor. You just need to make sure that you have hardware at the offsite location that supports that recovery of the VM snapshots. You need to be running VMware connected to your target so you can recover the hot backup copy. Now, your next question is really, what type of recovery do you need to do? First, you need to ask yourself, what type of recovery do you need to do? Right? Do I need to do file level? File level recovery allows access to a share file or folder or the application recovery of Windows or Linux. You can also use this for testing. You can mount off the appliance a recovery point, and you can pull off stuff, anything you need to, copy and paste. Now, if you also need to recover the entire VM, you might need to put back the complete virtual guest. It's complete virtual guest recovery, and you use it when it's not really urgent. You're just going to put back the VM. You're going to do a normal restore. You can also use this for cloning and testing as well, too. Just like the file level, you may want to open a snapshot to test and make sure you can get two files. In the case of putting an entire VM back, you may want to put one back and rename it just to make sure that the restore goes through. You may not even power the machine up once you're done restoring it. Now, you can also do the entire VM instantly, and this allows for the virtual guest to recover instantly using host resources, host processor, host memory, and it runs the virtual disk through a share off the appliance. Now, this supports live or audit modes. We're going to talk about those differences as we go through a little bit more of the recovery today. Once again, a little special note down there at the bottom. To recover a VMware template, you must perform a normal VM recovery, the entire VM. Right? Templates recover as new VMs always. Now, the next question you ask yourself is, now where do I want to recover it to? Now, if you're doing a file and folder recovery, you have to manually copy that data out, the desired objects, whether it's a file, a folder, an entire application structure. You're going to copy that out to any location. Could be cloning, could be production. You have to go through those steps of maybe shutting down databases and stopping services before you even copy some stuff in. You have to check with all your vendors and see how that process restores. The other place you can recover is an entire VM. You can go to the same or different host, right? And the host does not automatically overwrite it. It usually, by default, will have a _restore extension, and it's going to create a clone of the machine. Now, once it boots up, it's going to assume the original network and all that stuff if you power that machine up without the network card deactivated for the first kind of test, right? If you plan on bringing that up offline, you may want to disable the network card for the first time. Now, VMware Instant Recovery, you can do it to the same host, different host. It does not automatically overwrite either. There is an _restore extension, and in the audit mode, the network card is disabled for you automatically. In live mode, the network's active, and a disk migration will happen from Unitrends back to your VMware environment through Storage vMotion. Which instant recovery mode do you need, right? We talked a little bit about live and audit mode. Let's break those down a little bit more for you. So both instant recovery and audit mode creates a disk image and the new virtual machine from the recovery point back to your VMware host environment, as I talked about earlier. We're going to use the host processor memory, but we're going to use the virtual disks that are sitting on the Unitrends appliance. Right now, for instant recovery live mode, you can assume the role of the original server and is available immediately. The network cards are activated. It replaces the failed or corrupted VM, and it's used to go back into production. Once again, the network is active with the original configuration, and the next scheduled backup of that machine is automatically promoted to a full, so it captures the recreation of this machine from the start again with the new unique ID. There's also the audit mode once again, and we're going to see the audit mode in my demonstrations later on. And once again, the audit mode is used to really verify your recovery points, right? It's really certifying that, yes, that is a good recovery point. I can see the machine booting up. I can log into it, and there is no impact to the original VM. Once again, it's not used in production. The network configuration is disabled, so it's not going to affect your production, and there's no changes to the backup strategy for it. It doesn't even know that you recovered it or played with it. It's not going to change anything within that structure either. Now, when we take a look at recovering an actual VMware guest, then, how the guest recovery works is you're going to choose your incremental or full or the imported backup copy that you want to restore from, right? Usually you're going to go to the newest recovery point, and you're going to try to put that machine back from that newest recovery point. But no matter what recovery point you choose, you're going to restore the VM of any OS to the original host or to another host that's been added to your Unitrends, right, or to vCenter. Anything we can see through vCenter or the asset registrations. Right? Now, the appliance uses the backup or the imported backup to recreate the VM on the recovery target, on the host that you choose. Right? The system creates a job for the VM configuration and each recovery point in the recovery chain or the backup group. You must wait until all recovery points are completed for the full restore. So if I put over a full with, 2 or 3 or 4 incrementals in between, it's going to put the configuration, the full, and those 3 incrementals. You have to wait for all of that to finish. Once that's done, then you can power up that virtual machine. Right? You're going to identify the guest to recover. You're going to determine that the guest has enough space and resources and network requirements. You're going to determine and figure out what those are. Then you're going to verify that the host can meet the space and resource and network requirements based on step number 2. How big is the machine? What networks do I need to go to? Does that host have that configuration and storage and resources that I can restore it to? Then you're going to identify that backup or the imported backup, as we talked about in the previous slide. Then you're going to select your restore options. What target, what resource, what storage, what network, what VM guest. All right, you set up all that stuff in your options, and then you run the job. It's going to go through that process of setting that machine up and recreating that machine from those recovery points. Next, we're going to watch the how-to video tutorial on recovering a file in a VMware backup and recovering an entire VM. Next, we're going to take a look at recovering an entire VM instantly. To recover, you'll need to first verify your ESX environment. Then you're going to confirm that your ESX host meets the hardware requirements for the recovery that you're going to do. You're going to also make sure that you allocate instant recovery storage space inside of your Unitrends Satori interface. You need to calculate up how big your servers are, use space, give about 20 to 30% room to grow, and you're going to calculate and allocate that instant recovery storage through the Satori interface. Next, you're going to go to your recovery point that you want to find. You're going to locate that recovery point, and you're going to create the instant recovery job from there. There's either live and audit mode, so we'll break those down once again for you here as we go through. All right, first you're going to verify your ESX environment. Right? Are you running ESX or ESXi, vCenter? What are you running? Which versions? 5.5, 5.1, 5.5, 6. Those are the supported versions and the requirements that you have to meet the minimums of. Right? Then you're going to take a look at your restore target. Must be an ESX server managed by vCenter with storage vMotion. If you plan on doing anything live, you have to meet those requirements. And you must utilize an ESX host that is in the same version or higher as the original ESX server that hosted the original virtual machine. Right? We can't go backwards. It must be the same version or higher. And it's highly recommended that you restore to the same version. It's really recommended that you restore to the same version. Now, your target ESX server and its managing vCenter, it must be registered to the Unitrends appliance from which you're performing the instant recovery. So if I'm doing a hot backup copy instant recovery, then I must have a VMware environment registered to my target, Unitrends target offsite. And if I'm using a backup copy, I want to use that host level backup or a copy of the VM. Right? We want to verify that I've got a host level backup or a backup copy of the VM. For the backup copy, I want a host level backup or I want a backup copy of the VM. Right? I'm going to check for a backup copy sitting on a cold storage target, somewhere like that. All right, we're going to confirm our ESX host meets the hardware requirements. We're going to verify that there's enough space and adequate resources. We're going to verify that there's enough space and adequate resources for the recovery. We're going to take a look at our configuration. Are we running hardware version 10, ESXi version 5.5 or higher? Are we running hardware version 11 with ESXi version 6? Select our target host, and we're going to add the host to the appliance. We're going to make sure that we can see that ESX host from the Unitrends system. And a recovered VMware VM is created with the default name, original name _ restore. So if I have domain controller 1, I'm going to see domain controller 1 _ restore. That's our default name. And also remember that raw device mappings, RDM disks, recover as standard virtual disks. We can't see those. You have to use an agent to make sure you're recovering the raw device mappings through VMware. Now you also want to make sure you allocate your Unitrends instant recovery storage. Right? For physical Unitrends recovery series appliances, the physical appliances come with a set amount of backup storage. And that backup storage allocation, it can be modified to increase the amount of storage used for instant recovery, and it cannot be added to the appliance. You can't add backup storage. You're kind of set amounts based on the appliance size. Now, with Unitrends virtual appliances, the virtual appliances are deployed as virtual machines, and after the initial deployment, you can add backup storage, and that means you can add and increase instant recovery storage if you need to allocate and change that allocation. So you can allocate instant recovery space later, but doing so may require the appliance to purge local backups to make room for the newly allocated instant recovery storage space. That goes the same for both physical and virtual appliances, by the way, that little note. Now, preparing for an instant recovery job, we need to identify our guest to recover. We want to determine and make sure we know how big that server is. How big is it? What type of processor, memory, and what are my network requirements for it? We're then going to verify that the host we're going to use meets those same requirements based on VMware's best practice for putting that machine back. Then we're going to make sure we can identify a backup or the imported backup once again that we want to use for the restore. We're going to select our desired restore options for live or audit mode, our target locations and the resources and the storage. Double check our network configuration. Make sure we set the VM guest name. Do we want to overwrite it or are we going to clone for a test? We want to go ahead and run that job. Few instant recovery best practices here to perform instant recovery in audit mode to verify that backups and imported backup copies can be used to recover the VM. You want to do that test once in a while, get it on a list, start creating a schedule or whatever you have to do to go through these audits. They're really easy and pretty cool to test. You want to repeat this procedure as needed to test new backups. You bring new VMs on, you start snapshotting it, go back and audit it. Don't just believe that it's going to work. Go back and test this through the instant recovery audit process. Next, let's watch the how-to video tutorial on how to perform VMware Instant Recovery.